Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who saw at least 6 games of soccer this weekend. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Yes, I did. It was a busy weekend. A busy weekend of soccer/football.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be our biggest ever...
Voetbal or whatever I have to say to make it properly Dutch or German.
Fußball in Germany.
Uh-huh.
I think Voetbal in the Netherlands.
Right.
I'm definitely going to hear about that second one.
Probably.
Okay, so we've got 6 games that we're going to review today because there's a lot of action, right? There was the Klassiker, as they call it, Dortmund Bayern. There's the Manchester Derby. There was the Copa Libertadores final. And there were 3 MLS playoffs games on Sunday night. We're going to hit all of them. But we're not going to do our 30-minute breakdown of each one, because who has time for that?
Yeah.
Who has time for that?
Especially who has time to listen to that.
It's not the Pete Holmes podcast.
No, it's not. But also that would be a 3-hour-long podcast.
That's
that might be a bit much, yeah.
So what we're going to do...
It's not a hardcore history? I'm going to go with that.
There we go. Yeah. Softcore history. We are going to give, each of us will give our big takeaway from each game. It's almost like a hot take, except we've put more thought into it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
our big take from each game.
Ideally, we've put more thought into it. We'll see if that bears out over the course of this episade.
So let's do it chronologically.
Okay.
So let's start for East Coast.
Assume we do it while drinking a Corona, yes.
It is
okay.
Saturday afternoon. It was Dortmund versus Bayern at the top of the Bundesliga. Well, 1v3 in this case. What's your big takeaway from this day?
Not anymore, though, because...
Now it's 1v5, right? So Dortmund won 3-2. This was a thrilling game. I really, really enjoyed, especially the second half, where Dortmund maybe loosened it up a little bit. They are still top of the Bundesliga.
Yep.
4 points clear?
7 points clear of Bayern Munich.
Clear of Bayern. Bayern are in 5th.
Yep.
5th place Bayern Munich.
Yep.
And they're still not firing Niko Kovac because Karl-Heinz Rummenigge is dug in deep.
Absolutely. I mean, and Mads Mikkelsen is off filming things, so until you can get Mads Mikkelsen in to play Niko Kovac, you have to stick with Mads Mikkelsen light.
See, that's what they could do. They get Mikkelsen to play Kovac, but have Jupp Heynckes just whispering tactics into him.
I mean, he's terrifying enough that I would listen to most of what he tells me to do. And I have to believe he speaks a variety of languages, does Mr. Mads. But I would say this, strangely, I'm going to start with Bayern Munich on this.
Okay.
Because you watched it live, correct? Mm-hmm. I did not. I watched the replay of it. And when you watch a replay,
did you know the score?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you watch the replay, knowing the score, knowing what happened, I think, as we've talked about many times, it removes a lot of the emotion from the equation. Mm-hmm. But I also think sometimes it can kind of dictate the way you watch it, because I knew that Dortmund won, but I didn't look at the time or who scored and when. So I kind of had this idea that Dortmund were in control the whole game. Mm-hmm. So even when Munich went 1-0 ahead,
Lewandowski.
I was like, oh, but there's going to be vulnerabilities and they're going to break down. It's going to be a whole problem. And I kept kind of watching the game through that lens. And by the end, I was like, oh, that was a really close game. And so I think I say all that to say...
Lewandowski, it was close enough that Lewandowski had that equaliser. Yeah. He did the plant foot, which I believe it's been suggested to us. I'm sorry, I can't give credit. It's been suggested that we should call that move the vegan, because it's plant-based.
It's plant-based, yep.
He was just offside,
yes,
and he really was, but only just, and that's how close this game was.
Indeed. Yeah? And I think he had 2 of those calls, one more fractional than the other, certainly. But all that is to say, in my mind, that I kept kind of expecting the narrative coming away from this game to be, oh, this is it. This is a young Dortmund team that are fired up, and an old, creaky Bayern Munich team that need restoration, renovation, whatever. And in reality,
just imagining Frank Ribery's knees creaking.
Exactly. But in reality, my takeaway is a 7-point gap in November does not a season make. And I think there's a reason why they're sticking with Niko Kovac, and I think it's because there were moments in this game when you saw the old Bayern, that sort of Bayern who are that juggernaut who really it's impossible to deal with. And when you think you put out one fire...
This is a hot take.
Yeah, I think you saw moments of that. I think Dortmund fought back, and Bayern really struggled to deal with Dortmund, especially in the second half. But for a big chunk of that first half, I kept wondering, what? Does somebody get injured? Does something go wrong? And so I would just say that I'm very much enjoying a very competitive Bundesliga, but I would definitely not look at Bayern Munich as this, oh, they're way past it, they're going to struggle for the rest of the season. I will not be surprised if they are contending for that title in April and May.
It's strange, right? Because the standards for Bayern and for Bayern fans are much, much higher than for any other team.
Exactly.
You're meant to be 5 points clear at the top of the league at all times, even on match day 1. That's what being a Bayern fan is all about.
Exactly. But
recently at least.
But I think, when you then have that sort of that juggernaut, for lack of a better term, when it starts to kind of be on the downward trajectory, you can look at the games and see, like, oh, in seasons past they would have done this, but now they're shooting from distance, or now they're just relying on individuals. I mean, that first goal, it's really well worked. Yes, there's some mistakes in there. Franck Ribéry's cross is, I don't think, meant to be a cross the way he hits it, but it ends up redistributing possession, and then we keep going from there.
Yeah, this is the Serge Gnabry to Lewandowski.
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
Also, important takeaway from this game is that, is it Serge Gnabry? Because that's what I've learned. That's what the commentators kept going with, and suddenly I feel like maybe that G is silent. So that's a good one for us to look at again. But it just felt like there were moments in this game where I saw Bayern as the team that are still going to be able to come together and smash some of the other Bundesliga sides 5-0, 4-0, 4-1. And I think it will end up being closer than it is right now. Those could be famous last words.
Well, they didn't smash Dortmund.
They did not.
So despite being, 1-0 up at half-time, Bayern, Dortmund win this game 3-2. One of the guys I want to credit heavily is Jadon Sancho.
Yep.
This is the first time I've really paid attention to Jadon Sancho, and I have an even deeper appreciation for what a high-quality player, young English winger Jadon Sancho is.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with that one.
And I want to say this isn't my English bias, because praising Jadon Sancho and appreciating Jadon Sancho also means you have to accept that he's in this sort of contest for that right wing spot with Christian Pulisic, and he might be the better player.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's tough to say as an American, but yes, I think you saw moments in this game that made me understand why people are so excited about Jadon Sancho, why there's some speculation that maybe he ends up getting a recall to Manchester City or a buyback. A buyback, yeah. That's a better way of putting it.
But also, to me, watching this game, maybe we'll get into the details of what he did in a second, but watching this game made me realise that he wasn't arrogant to say this past, I can't remember how long ago it was, but when he said, hey, if I'm not going to get minutes at Man City, I want to leave. And he kind of forced his way into that move to Borussia Dortmund. And it sounded arrogant at the time from some kid who'd never played. But when you see him up against Bayern Munich, right, burning David Alaba, scaring the entire Bayern Munich team, you realise this is a really high-quality player. And here's my big take that I want to get into is... he's not just a dribbler. That's what I really thought of Jadon Sancho as, a guy he's capable of receiving the ball and just going at people, and that's really exciting. But what I saw in this game is a guy who can pick a pass, thread it through, weight it perfectly. And I think the very best example is the ball he puts through to Marco Reus to win the penalty kick to get the equaliser. That ball is 100% perfect and not easy to do.
No, not at all. I mean, and I think... This is where I was still in the Bayern Munich are in decline mode watching this game, and so Neuer does that little hesitation, and then he comes out, and I did find myself thinking, if that were a fully confident, fully fit Neuer, does he hesitate? Does this even matter, or does he come out and scoop that one up cleanly? But he doesn't, and so what it comes down to is it's a great ball, and then it's a good little touch from Marco Reus.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that being impressive from Jadon Sancho, but I would say still that his dribbling is still incredibly impressive to me, but it's his ability to dribble with his head down but still know where his teammates are.
Yeah.
I think it's
Does he have eyes in his ears, maybe?
That's possible. It could be. It's a new technology, but I think it's one of the several Marco Reus misses where he Sancho dribbles into the box and it sort of looks like his head is down, like, oh, he's doing the young teenager running at people, head down, he's going to get tackled, and instead he kind of out of nowhere slots it laterally to a wide open Marco Reus. That was the impressive passing that I really focused on from Sancho, was the dribble, but then somehow a pass out of nowhere and nobody saw it, so thus his teammates are open.
And it's worth remembering, he's a couple years behind Christian Pulisic, technically, in terms of his development, because he's 2 years younger, but he looks at least as dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah?
I mean, I would say given how much more regularly it seems like he is contributing in terms of goals and assists than Christian Pulisic has, at least in seasons past. Pulisic, I think, has had more this time around, but it still is the kind of intermittent production.
Yeah.
I do feel like, Jadon Sancho has put himself in a position where, as you and Adam Snavely discussed, if it's going to be one of the two of them.
I call him Snaves now.
The Snaves.
I'm not sure you can, but I can.
I'll call him the Snaver. It seems like right now he's put himself in a better position to start those bigger games.
Yep. And so I want to talk about Pulisic. So
he being Sancho, not
Adam Whittaker-Snaver.
Yeah.
Be a commute, right? So I did spend the second half of this game really wanting Lucien Favre, our Dortmund coach, to bring Christian Pulisic on to either create the equaliser or the winner or the icing on the cake goal. And he never did. Sancho stayed on the right. Jakob Brun Larsen stayed on the left until the very, very end. What we got was Delaney. Is it Mark Delaney? Or no, Thomas Delaney came in and replaced Larsen almost as an extra defensive patch on the left for the final few minutes. And I've got to say, in the end, if I just want a Dortmund win, because Favre's got no stake in the US men's national team, he doesn't have to give Pulisic minutes just because, right? He made the right choice to just get that defensive player on there to patch up that left side, because Achraf Hakimi was at fault for both of Bayern's goals.
Yes, he was.
Right? First one, he doesn't step out to Gnabry, and Jakob Brun-Larsen has to try and cover. Second one, he steps out far too quickly to Serge Gnabry, and Brun-Larsen is left exposed down that side.
Yes.
So the thing I got from Snaves was that Brun-Larsen is essentially there as a more defensively minded winger to provide cover to Achraf Hakimi. So that means that the contest is for Pulisic has to displace Sancho on the right, or Dortmund have to be all-out attack so that Favre's just rolling the dice and going Pulisic and Sancho at the same time.
Yes.
That is the current situation.
Yeah, but I think it's also worth remembering the situation at halftime, which is we saw Julian Weigl, a player we both enjoy and have enjoyed, substituted for Dahoud.
Yeah, Mahmoud Dahoud.
Thank you. And I feel like that's worth remembering in the sense that it doesn't mean that like Weigl is now a bad player and it's going to be Dahoud every time. And that's, I think we tend to think in a very linear way when it comes to soccer that like, oh, this player came out, this player came on, they looked better, so next game this player is going to start.
Yeah.
And I think what it indicated
Bigger picture,
to me,
right?
was that Lucien Favre has different systems dependent on what's happening in the given moment. And I think that halftime change was one he needed to make to get a little bit more steel in the midfield, a little bit more possession and creativity.
Yeah.
And I think that extends to Christian Pulisic as well, that there's going to be games when Pulisic starts because Favre wants something that Pulisic provides that Sancho doesn't. There's going to be other games when Sancho starts and Pulisic doesn't for the exact same reason.
I also think the key is that Pulisic has been injured this year, right? There's the two US call-ups that he had to drop out of because he was injured. He really was injured, right? As in he didn't play the Dortmund game after one of the internationals. So he's had a very stuttering start to the season, mostly just because he's picked up these little injuries here and there. So I don't want anyone to hit a panic button just yet, but we should know that he is in a contest for a starting spot.
Yes.
Maybe that's good, though. Maybe that's a fun thing to watch, right?
Yeah. We'll see if
for
he
a
looks...
table-topping team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Table-topping team in the Bundesliga?
Yeah.
If only that started with a T, it'd be easier to contain the alliteration. We've mentioned a certain player once. We did get a scouting report on him, so I feel like it's worth bringing that up now.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it comes from Yedwab, scouting Serge Gnabry, since now all G's are silent. The 23-year-old Erman wide forward for Bayern Munich. Gnabry made his sixth start in a row during Der Klassiker ahead of James Rodriguez and pushing Muller to the midfield in Bayern's biggest game of the season so far. He rose to the occasion, working hard the entire match to create opportunities, including the assist for Lewandowski's opener and his slick Rabona for an MLS assist on Lewandowski's second. Until Rabiot and Koeman return from injury and Alphonso Davies arrives, Gnabry is now a nailed-on starter in the front three.
I think that's true.
Yep.
Yeah, which is an incredible achievement, right? Because we've been following Gnabry,
Yep.
if we're doing that,
Yeah.
For the last couple of years, and it never seemed like he was going to crack the Bayern
Nope.
starting lineup, and now here he is.
Here he is,
Yeah.
and I thought he was... I mean, Lewandowski certainly had a good game. I thought Joshua Kimmich very much so had a good game, but I felt
His
like...
chip for the second goal was something special.
Quite good, but I felt like Serge Gnabry had one of the better games for Bayern and one of the better games overall in this game.
Yep. Shout out as well, just because I haven't mentioned him, Paco Alcácer,
Yeah.
who came off the bench and once again did his magic and scored. And Marco Reus, you mentioned that he missed a lot of chances.
Yeah.
He also really buried that equaliser.
He did.
The cross from the right.
Yeah,
That was a special
and had the
finish.
penalty, which was one that he definitely had to think about, obviously, because it's a penalty. And I say that in relation to the commentator saying that his second goal, he didn't really have time to think. He just had to hit it on the volley. He puts it in the net. The two in between that he missed maybe had a little bit too much time to think about. But either way, he gets that brace, and Dortmund get the win.
So Dortmund 3-2 over Bayern. We should move on to what was scheduled to be chronologically the next game, Boca Juniors versus River Plate in the Copa Libertadores final first leg. But instead, I'm going to take a big sip of water and reschedule that game for after Manchester City versus Manchester United.
You've been working on that one? Did you have that one in your notes?
No, in my
notes. Did you have the water pause in your notes?
Just in my head.
I'm not sure I believe you.
It just says Boca River.
There we
after
go.
Dortmund Bayern.
Okay.
So yeah, if people don't know, the game was rescheduled from the Saturday to the Sunday because of an absolutely torrential downpour.
Did you see the footage of the referee kicking the ball?
Yes.
It like stops like 2 feet away from him. It's like, all right, yeah, maybe don't play on that
field. That's the correct test, right?
Yes.
Does this ball move? No?
Yeah.
All right, we'll maybe try again tomorrow.
Yeah, a little bit of water makes the ball move faster. A lot of bit of water makes the ball move not at all.
But the Manchester derby did happen Sunday. We couldn't watch this one live because we were playing.
I thought it was weird that in honor of that Superclásico, Manchester United chose to play this game underwater. That was impressive. That was an impressive show of solidarity.
It finished 3-1 to Manchester City. Manchester City were ahead to that David Silva goal after 12 minutes.
Yep.
My big take from this game is you can't sit deep and narrow and compact against Manchester City. It doesn't work, and they will score sooner rather than later. And I think Man United learned this the hard way when they sat deep and compact and narrow in a very tight 4-3-3. And they still found space. I think that ball from Sterling to the back post for Bernardo Silva, who gave Luke Shaw the slip and then put it back across for David Silva. There was almost no space to work with, but Manchester City are operating at a level now where almost no space is just enough space for them to make something happen.
I agree to some extent, except I would add, I think they still found plenty of space for most of even those first 12 minutes. The telling
But that's what I'm saying, but Man United was set up to deny them space, and yet they still worked with the very little space they had.
Well, I think two things. First of all, did you see the very telling statistic about that goal in the 12th minute? Prior to that goal, or I guess like when that goal goes in, City had completed 96 passes in those first 12 minutes.
Wow.
United, 7. Ooh. So rather telling. But I do think that the reason why I take issue with a little bit what you said is because a lot of times in games where one team is being very defensive, when we go back and watch or when we're watching live, we're able to see like, oh, City are being forced into, or whoever the team is, they're being forced into these kind of low percentage frustrated shots because they can't find space, they can't find time. And I mean, in the second minute, you have Bernardo Silva cutting inside and shooting just wide. And that wasn't in my mind, a low percentage chance. He gets the ball in space in a transition. And it felt like in that moment, if you're Jose Mourinho, he probably should have looked at that and thought, something is not working, somebody's not tracking, we need to figure this out. Didn't seem like they did, and so instead it was basically Man City kind of doing what they wanted for most of the game.
Yep. So I want to go back to that Luke Shaw thing.
Sure.
With Bernardo Silva at the back post, because again, it's set up correctly, right? There should be nothing for Raheem Sterling to aim at, but Bernardo Silva's clever movement gives Raheem Sterling something to aim at, and Raheem Sterling lands it right on his foot, right? And that is why you cannot defend deep against Manchester City.
But it still was so confusing to me as why, like multiple times in this game for the first and especially the third goal, you had United players just stopping. And I don't fully understand what the plan was or why that was the case.
I think the plan was to not overcommit and go chasing and to just sort of occupy the space.
But why then would Luke Shaw not track Bernardo Silva more aggressively? He really does just get like run past, and it seems almost as though he thinks like, haha, that ball will never be delivered in, and then it's perfectly delivered in.
I think maybe he's caught in that thing of, I'd love to rewatch it before we talk about this, but I would bet that he's caught in that thing of looking at Raheem Sterling and trying to look at Bernardo Silva at the same time, and one's to his right and one's to his left, and you're going to get caught on the blind side eventually, because you can't look in both places at once.
Yeah. So that makes sense, but I think it also goes back to your initial point, which is you can't sit deep, and it felt like this is a lesson that many teams had already learned playing Man City, but maybe Jose Mourinho just wanted to make sure he knew for himself.
It's weird, right? I think if you're a big-ish team, right, like if you consider yourself to be a big club like Manchester City, the best way to go at them is maybe to roll the dice and just go after them in some way, as Liverpool proved in the Champions League semi-final last season.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my take. What's your take?
My big takeaway really focuses on the City third goal, which has gotten a lot of attention. It's the 44-pass sequence leads to the goal. I think it begins with the commentator maybe like 5 or 10 passes in saying, if this ends in something, it will be pretty astounding given this like amazing possession. It ends in the goal. But
I did think as soon as Arlo White said, I've lost count of how many passes, I was like, oh, sir, I'm going to rewind and count.
Yep. You were not the only one. I think it's the third most passes leading to a goal in Premier League history. So there's that. The thing that I wanted to compare it to was I did do some research to make sure this was an actual thing and not just a like TV show contrivance. But in most cop shows, there's always the box. Do you know what the box is? It's like when you put the suspect in the interrogation room and you sort of you grill them, but I think in a lot of times it's not the very dramatic smoking cigarettes, whatever. It's just asking the same questions.
Not like Michael Che.
Not so much. Yeah, exactly. It's not Michael Che. It's not, anything that you see on CSI. It's a lot more asking the exact same question over and over again, but finding little differences in the way the suspect responds. Again, I'm not police, but this is my understanding, until eventually you can kind of crack that story a little bit, or you frustrate them into saying something they didn't mean to say, and then you can kind of pursue that line. And I'm going to say this goal for me, I'm calling it the box, because that is really what City do here, is they just keep passing the ball. It's little passes, and you can see United players getting increasingly frustrated. Juan Mata on 2 different occasions in here.
Juan Mata, who is left-footed, by the way.
Yeah, we got that one. Throws his hands up on multiple occasions as if to say, like, why aren't people stepping? And you just start to see little moments of that quote-unquote discipline from Manchester United that you would assume they had under Mourinho's drilling in the lead up to this game.
Yeah.
You start to see that weaken a little bit. And Fellaini, after being asked the same question or the same pass 14 times, finally breaks a little bit and goes and over-pursues. Suddenly there's space in behind. Then Nemanja Matic over-pursues, and that leaves space. And suddenly you just
cracked under question.
You just have and then you have these little breaks that lead to City getting more space and more space and more space, and then eventually you have yet another breakdown when you have Ilkay Gundogan unmarked in the box after he ghosts past 2 United players.
I think that's a brilliant analogy.
Thank you.
Cosign.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that, City perfectly execute the box on a regular basis. And the one that really made it stand out to me was there was a point when David Silva gets the ball, and he almost sort of loses it. Like, he passes it under himself, like kind of megs himself accidentally. And then he gets control, and he looks at a pass out on the left channel, and it's open. And you can see him do the Guardiola math of, if I play it there, that limits our passing options. It maybe is not going to be able to recycle as much. And he turns and plays it back to the center backs, and possession keeps going. And that just felt like a decision to be deliberately boring to keep possession, as opposed to let's play it wide and see if we get a cross or something like that.
Yeah.
And they move it around again. United get frustrated. City have their 3rd goal.
All right, I'm going to call that #analysis.
Thank you.
And maybe move us on, unless you have anything else to say on the Manchester derby. I'm sure as a Manchester United fan, you don't want to wallow in it too much.
No, other than I enjoyed the Rafa Honigstein tweet today, to paraphrase, that was like, Mourinho's greatest managerial feat of the last 2 weeks has been convincing people that this United squad isn't good enough to compete with its Premier League rivals. And I'll leave it at that.
Actually, I would say that this is what Mourinho tried to do against Juventus away, and weirdly got away with it, because even though they conceded, he had that late rally. This is what should have happened. He should have got punished for sitting back and having essentially a not waterproof protection. You know what I mean? Like, it's like water resistant but not waterproof. So you sit back and eventually concede one. It just so happens that this time it happened after 12 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have one more question for you about this game, if you don't mind. I saw they cut away multiple times to Sir Alex Ferguson sitting in the stands.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I first had as a United fan, I had the emotional reaction of, like, this cannot be fun for him to watch. Then my secondary thought was, do you think a manager of his quality, or even like Guardiola, if he's sitting watching a game, do you think they're like watching and doing a little bit of tactical awareness, or do you think he's watching that and thinking this is not going to work because that player can't do this and this player? Like, do you think they still
are you asking about Ferguson or Guardiola?
Ferguson in this case, like,
because he's not actually managing the game.
Like, do you think he's sitting up there and sort of really tactically evaluating, like, oh, this is not going to work, they're definitely going to score because this deficiency is obvious, or do you think he's just sort of like, in the moment, the emotion is there, as it is for us when we watch a game?
I would imagine, especially, it's been a few years now,
Yeah.
right? It's been 6 or 7 years since Ferguson retired from
2013,
Manchester United. I would imagine he's not like paying attention to tiny, tiny details and thinking about changes he would make so much as watching it more as a fan. But obviously with a much better eye than your average fan.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right.
Because imagine how crazy that would drive you to be thinking, no, we need to get Luke Shaw to do this instead. But you have no method of enacting it. You're better off maybe sitting back and not getting involved.
That makes sense.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially,
Otherwise you end up like that dad that pushed his kid, the goalkeeper, in front of the ball.
You don't want to be that. But
that's a bad dad, by the way.
Yeah, don't shove your children. That's an important lesson. TSS officially says don't shove kids.
Don't distract them while they're in goal. Don't be talking to them beforehand.
Well, anyway. Maybe they need some coaching. Either way, Ferguson was in attendance. I'm going to guess he did not have to pay for those seats. But if you want to attend a sporting event of your own and you need some tickets, we've got a way you can get them, Mr. Grove.
We have. Today's show is sponsored by SeatGeek. Buying tickets to all kinds of live events used to be complicated and confusing, unless you're Alex Ferguson, I guess.
Unless.
People take care of it for you. But if you're not Sir Alex Ferguson, you have to buy tickets yourself. You can now use the SeatGeek app. You download the app. It's the best way to get the app. Open it up on your phone.
And it's 17 clicks?
Tap around. It is 2 taps
there we
to
go.
buy a ticket. But honestly, if you're going to browse around, it's going to be more taps than that. The 2 taps is once you've decided the event that you're going to go to.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So we've had lots of people tweet and email us to say they used the SeatGeek app, got the discount, which we'll let you know the discount code at the end of the ad read, and they were very pleased with how the whole thing worked.
Well, that is very good. And I assume at least 4 MLS fan bases are pleased with the results of the weekend or of last week thus far. So if you want to attend maybe one of the conference finals, you could do so, and SeatGeek has you covered. There will be tickets available. There are tickets available for those games. Both.
There's even a whole little section for MLS playoffs.
Exactly.
So
there we go. SeatGeek's got you covered.
And you can get $20 off any of the tickets that you see when you download the SeatGeek app. Enter the promo code TSS. Enter the promo code TSS. You'll get $20 off your first ticket purchase, even if it's an MLS conference final.
Even if it's an MLS conference final. So thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. Remember, SeatGeek, life's an event. We've got the tickets.
We didn't get tickets to the Copa Libertadores.
We did not.
Which is probably a good thing, because did you see the one, I believe, Japanese guy who went all the way over there?
No.
Huge Boca fan. Went there,
Wrong day.
But was flying back the next day. Couldn't change his ticket, so he got a nice little tour of the stadium.
Oh, good. I'm sure that's what he came for.
Yeah, but he didn't get to see the game. Mm-hmm. So, for those who have not been paying attention, Copa Libertadores Final. Mm-hmm. It is essentially the Champions League of South America. It's a little bit different, but it's essentially that. And this year, for the first time ever, the final is the two big Buenos Aires rivals, Boca Juniors and River Plate. And for the last time, the final is going to be played over 2 legs. The first leg eventually got played on Sunday at Boca Stadium, and it finished 2-2.
Mm-hmm. Which I did not do the research. You did. So I was sort of like, well, that's got to be a better result for River than for Boca, because those are 2 away goals. Come to find out, not so much, because away goals don't matter.
No away goals in the Copa Libertadores. Mm-hmm. So here's my strong take. My first one. Away goals don't kill games. Away goals sort of should just be done away with. Because if you can have a 2-legged final between these 2 rivals and away goals didn't cause anyone to like bunker up or change the shape of the game, why even have them?
Right. Wait, I'm confused then. So why do you said away goals don't kill games? They should just be done away with?
Away removing the carrot of scoring away goals doesn't really make a difference.
I understand.
Right?
Okay.
Because River didn't go and defend. They scored 2 goals away from home.
Yes, they did.
Not too far away from home.
Yeah.
They had to use the Superclasico rivalry language. They had to travel into the city.
Okay. So that's your big takeaway?
I mean, it's one of them.
Away goals are dumb?
Away goals are a dumb rule. Yeah, I really believe that.
Well,
and I would use this game as Exhibit A.
Okay, I'm with you on that one. I'm using this game as Exhibit A for my big takeaway, and it's one of the reasons I like watching like these games that we wouldn't otherwise normally watch. It's because obviously it's just cool to watch different stuff, but it also gives us insight into players or names to pay attention to later on down the road.
Yeah.
And one for me, my biggest takeaway is I don't understand why Agustin Rossi is not the Argentina goalkeeper. I do not get that right now.
Why? So what do you like from him?
So, I mean, many, many things. And it's worth noting he's, I think, 23 years old, 0 appearances for at senior level for the national team. But in this game, yes, anytime a goalkeeper concedes 2 goals, you might think like, oh, not a very good game. One of them, I would say he did everything possible.
Could you let people know which team he played for?
Sure. Excuse me. Boca. Playing for Boca, yeah. And River's goalkeeper, Armani, had a good save at the very, very end of the game.
Oh, he went to the World Cup, right?
He did go to the World Cup, and he is, I think, the heir apparent to Sergio Romero when he's not injured. But in this game, I felt like Armani was beaten at the near post for Boca's first goal and did not look very solid in some of his decision-making, whereas Rossi routinely, I felt like, made big saves from like point-blank range, some from distance, commanded his box, did a very good job. The 2 goals, one was a one-on-one that was bent past him, but I think his positioning was very good. One was a flicked-on own goal. I'm not going to put too much fault on him for there. But outside of that, he had a few big stops. This game easily could have finished 4 or 5-2 to River, but it did not, and I felt like a big reason for that was Rossi's performance between the sticks.
Very nice. Okay, a player that caught my eye, Gonzalo Martinez. This was the number 10 for River Plate. So the big moment that he had is River conceded, right, in the 34th minute. The stadium was still celebrating. River kicked off. I don't remember who passed the ball to him, but Gonzalo Martinez received the ball from kickoff. A little gap opened, and he just sort of dribbled forward, looked up, saw a passing lane, and hit a pass through to, I believe it's Prato, to score the equaliser 60 seconds after River had conceded. I did the packing stats on that pass. +5. He took out 5 men with one pass immediately from kickoff. What a response to going 1-0 down in the Superclasico final.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I talked about Rossi, obviously, and that first goal, I was trying to figure out why it was that it felt like he was very isolated, given that they had just scored, and it seemed like maybe he shouldn't have been that wide open.
Yeah.
But you're right, it comes down to an amazing pass from Gonzalo Martinez.
Gonzalo Martinez, who has a couple caps for the Argentina national team, by the way. He's just in national team consideration now.
But do you remember the other one that I was like, the reason why I have him in my notes is because he had the one where the ball spills to the top of the box and he has a one-time volley that I think if those switched around, I think Armani maybe spills that into his own goal because it was hit as hard as Boca's first shot was that led to their first goal.
Yeah.
Here, though, Rossi's able to save it. But I remember Martinez's positioning and the mechanics he utilizes to hit that ball as hard as he does, but still keep it on frame through traffic. Really, really well done from him. He was definitely one that caught my eye throughout this game.
My other big take here is in a high-pressure game, which obviously this game is. Did you hear it referred to as the super final? Like mixing Superclasico and final.
I like that.
It's been called the super final. In a high-pressure game, sometimes ramming a free kick directly down the opposition defense's throat produces results.
All right.
So two of the goals were just really direct free kicks that were just banged into the area, right? Or kind of like floated hard is the wrong word, but driven high and hard into the area.
The direct overball.
Direct overball from a free kick caused absolute panic, including the own goal from, I have his name down here somewhere, is it Izquierdo? Scores the own goal to make it 2-2.
That sounds familiar. Yep. Yeah, and I guess it's not a direct overball because that's usually when you're playing a direct ball over the top for someone to run onto. This is
a direct in ball.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. It's a direct in ball.
He's really because we think of
if you hit an indirect free kick as a direct in ball, it's very confusing. Indirect, direct in.
But I'm watching this game. There's a lot of very classy midfield play, like people holding onto the ball, moving the ball. But in some ways, there's just the very old stereotypical English thing of put it in the mixer.
Yep.
Right. For 2 of the goals are just lift that ball in and we'll see who wants it the most, and 1 each for each team.
Yeah.
That's why it finishes 2-2.
It's also a good reminder, I don't know why this had not previously occurred to me heading into this game, that anytime you get to a cup final, the consistent refrain is a cup final is not necessarily going to be the prettiest soccer because everything is on the line at that point. And so that's already the case with a cup final. Then when it's a cup final featuring 2 arch rivals, it gets ratcheted up that more.
Super final.
And so I think it is, when it's a super final, it is going to be that sort of scrappy play is going to be what ends up making the difference and maybe what ends up getting you the goals.
Okay, so it finishes 2-2. There is the second leg still to come on November 24th. Because much like MLS playoffs, Copa Libertadores takes the international break between games. But imagine having 2 weeks between the first leg and the second leg.
Sure can't. That's a lot.
The drama.
A lot of time to think about things.
Yeah. All right, should we move on to the Major League Soccer?
For more playoffs that have to take a break now for international windows?
Yep, so conference semi-final second legs, with the exception of Seattle-Portland, which happened Thursday, all happened Sunday night.
Yep.
Basically, we came home from our league game. Yeah, afternoon, evening, and good night.
Yeah.
The Truman Show?
There we go.
So should we start with Sporting KC versus Real Salt Lake? This was 1-1 going in. It finished 4-2 on the afternoon to Sporting KC, 5-3 on aggregate.
Yep.
What's your big takeaway from this one, Mr. Rockwell?
Sporting KC Portland is going to be nuts. That is my takeaway from this game.
Why so?
Because I was watching this game. Obviously, as you said, it was 1-1 coming in. It was 3-1 when Sporting KC went up 2-0, and I thought, this is over. There's no way RSL are going to be able to figure this out, come back into it. Sporting KC, everything we know about Peter Vermees, we both, especially coming from the Paul Tenorio article, where it talked a lot about how disciplined he is, how he has all of these contingencies, and he doesn't believe in the Mike Tyson getting punched in the mouth idea, that you should still have preparation for that.
Yep.
So to see them go up 2-0 at home, I just thought, okay, that's kind of game over. And to be honest, I sort of quit paying attention. I was doing some other stuff, I was sending some emails, and suddenly I look back, and it was, 4-3 all of a sudden on aggregate, and I was very confused what happened. And this came very, very close to slipping away for Sporting KC at the very end. If Baby Beasler is able to finish one time instead of taking several touches, they are able to pull one back, and suddenly it's RSL advancing. and that was before Sporting KC got their kind of safety goal at the very end.
Yeah.
But I think with
Chaloy's no-look finish, which was mean. One of my notes, it's not my big take, but one of my notes is Daniel Chaloy is a bad man.
Yes, I'm good with that. But all that is to say that you look at how Sporting KC did very well in the first leg, then started this game strong, then had a vulnerability, then ended up seeing it out. But Portland, we've seen them in both of their knockout round games so far have that sort of that same level of things are all over the place, and I didn't see that coming, and wow, that happened too. So I'm just very excited for what the conference final is going to give us.
Ooh, so to skip ahead, it's going to be, I think, discipline versus discipline.
Yep.
SKC versus Portland, with maybe a bit more pressing from SKC than from Portland. And it's going to be energy versus energy with Red Bulls and Atlanta.
With a little bit of physicality thrown in there.
With a little bit of physicality. My big take from this game is that Felipe Gutierrez is a player I should have been paying more attention to.
All right. Why do you say that?
So 2 assists in this game, and technically an assist on the penalty kick.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You don't get credit for it. But we've
had that conversation many times that you should get the assist for that.
Absolutely.
If you earn it, or if you obviously set it up, and then the person who actually earns it takes it, you should get the assist.
I absolutely agree with that. So there's the very unselfish pass from Felipe Gutierrez for the first goal. You know what I'm talking about? After Johnny Russell does the overball, because Gutierrez has found space.
The overball.
Gutierrez really is sort of one-on-one with Romando, right? But he's wise and unselfish enough to know that if he just slips it to his right, that Rubio has an even better chance of scoring. That's some smart play from the Chilean.
All right.
But the assist on the Chaloy goal was that for the penalty kick? There's the one where he drags it back, essentially does a Cruyff turn, and then puts it through. I'm pretty sure it's for the penalty kick. So he is facing as if he's going to play the ball out wide. Mulholland buys it. I think it's Nick Biesler buys it. There is no one out wide. Sesanovic might be making a run, but I think Joel Plata's got him. So he's almost faking a pass that isn't on, then pulls off a Cruyff turn, leaves both of them behind, then slips the ball in behind for what I'm now confidently going to say is for Rubio to win the penalty kick.
I'm glad you talked
I watched a lot of soccer, and
a
a lot of things got jumbled up this weekend.
Is true.
Yeah.
So does that leave you excited to watch him the next round?
It does. It leaves me excited to watch Felipe Gutierrez, but also it made me realise that one of the keys to Sporting KC, and I'm sure seasoned Kansas City fans and seasoned MLS fans will already know this, but that midfield 3 that Peter Vermees has put together is almost like the platonic ideal of a midfield 3. You've got Ilie Sanchez as the 6, controlling, sitting deep, controlling things with passes. You've got Roger Espinoza doing a lot of the running, so he's like the number 8. And then you've got Felipe Gutierrez as essentially a number 10, but who's also hard-working. So you've got the perfect trio there of what you want in a midfield 3.
Yeah.
And it sort of made me wish that Peter Vermees was in the running to be US men's national team coach, because he knows how to balance out that trio perfectly.
I wouldn't disagree, and I would extend that further to say that there's a lot of times when Sporting KC, well, not really even a lot of times, it's just generally speaking, they remind me of Burnley, where Burnley can play a style, a system that really benefits them in the league they're in.
Yeah.
That if they lose players, those players maybe don't always look as they did when playing for Burnley, and that they can be replaced, and then there's still people in there who know the system who can execute it perfectly. And you look at some of the people that Sporting KC have lost over the season, like Dom Dwyer, like Benny Feilhaber, and how they continue to perform at the level they've performed at. It's really impressive. And again,
has Sporting KC have performed without, say, Feilhaber and Dwyer?
Yes, exactly. Sorry. So then it gives you good insight into what Peter Vermees has been able to bring and continues to bring to that team. And that means, in my mind, that yes, I'm with you, that maybe I wish he were maybe a little bit more in consideration.
Is there a chance he's secretly being interviewed?
Nope.
There's not, is there?
Nope.
Because didn't he say?
I believe he said no. Yeah.
Maybe it's all an elaborate cover-up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's the Watergate of coaching interviews.
Yeah, that seems likely.
He broke into Soccer House and had an interview and then covered it up. Should we move on to the next game?
Yes. But first, I suppose we should talk about today's other sponsor.
Oh, yes, please.
Who is it, Mr. Grove?
It's Hims. Hims is sponsoring today's show. Thank you to Hims. 66% of men lose their hair by age 35. But when you start to notice hair loss, it's too late. That hair's gone.
That is true. And so you could maybe, if you're Jose Mourinho, you're super stressed. There have been the studies that link stress to hair loss. You can go the Jose Mourinho route of just shaving your own head, and then you don't have to deal with it. Or if you want to be a little bit more proactive, you could go the Hims route, get some treatment to keep the hair you have.
So this is scientifically backed solutions, medical grade solutions that Hims will connect you with real doctors to prescribe these solutions for hair loss. These are well-known generic equivalents to name brand prescriptions to help you keep your hair.
That means no snake oil pills or gas station counter supplements.
Yeah, I guess you're welcome to try those, but we would not advise them.
Yeah, I feel like any hair loss pill that has like a cartoon snake on it, I'm like, no. I don't know what that is. You're not supposed to be like a series of bright colors with weird font. It's supposed to be medical, and that's exactly what Hims is offering.
Don't buy your medicines at the gas station.
Probably not. So our listeners can get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last. See website for further details. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy.
So if you go to forhims.com/totalsoccer, that's forhims.com/totalsoccer. The website again is forhims.com/totalsoccer.
One more time, Joe Grove?
No. forhims.com/totalsoccer for a trial month of Hims for just $5.
There we are. So thank you to Hims for sponsoring today's episode. Now, shall we talk further MLS?
Yes, yeah. Let's do Atlanta versus NYCFC. So, 70,000 people.
Yep.
Atlanta United with a 1-0 lead. NYCFC never had a chance, did they?
They really didn't.
Oh, it finished 3-1 on the night, 4-1 on aggregate. Miguel Almiron was fit and fitter.
Yep.
And NYCFC lost 3-1.
They did. And I would say my big takeaway from this game, and I think it's been a lot of people's big takeaway, so I don't think I'm unique in making this argument, but the thing that stood out to me about Atlanta's game plan was how it was still very pretty soccer in certain moments, as we've come to expect from Atlanta, but it was also a lot of pragmatism thrown in.
Yes.
I'm thinking specifically of the fact that the official had to stop. I believe it was not Don Garber, but Geiger.
Geiger, yeah.
I believe he had to stop and say...
He's the one from the World Cup.
There we go.
Tata Martino.
There we go. He had to basically stop play and say, hey, stop fouling Maxi Morales. Next one is a yellow, because I do think they were targeting him a little bit. There was, you had people paying specific attention to him. Remedy, I believe it was. But then you also had just little kicks, little nudges here and there, and it was spread around. So it wasn't just one player isolated in constantly fouling Morales. That's an easy yellow card, and then that play has to stop. The way they did it, it felt like really disrupted both NYCFC and Morales' game plans.
No disagreement from me. My takeaway is actually kind of similar. It's that I want to give credit to the not unsung, but less recognized heroes of this game, right? Because obviously Joseph Martinez will get a lot of credit. Scored 2 goals, scored one of those hopping penalty kicks that he scored.
So weird.
By the way, I still don't like it, but his success rate is pretty good, right? I think he's 9 out of 10 this year.
So I still don't like it, and I was watching this. My wife was in the room, and I had her watch it. She's never seen it before. She loves it. She thinks it's amazing. She's like, there's no way to know what he's doing. You cannot tell. Only he can know what he's doing in that moment. She was an enthusiastic supporter of his penalty approach.
Did you show the footage of him missing one, though?
No, I did not. I let her enjoy things. I don't have to disprove her, Daryl.
And then on top of that, there's Miguel Almiron, who we were texting with Alexis Guerreros and Christian Blanco, and Alexis was terrified of Miguel Almiron on the break, and basically said that he looks like he's on fast forward, which I think is true. It's part of what makes that when he's in the team.
Did you say fast forward or fat forward?
Fast forward.
Okay.
He's definitely not fat forward.
I couldn't tell if you said he thinks he's on fast forward or if he wishes he were a fat forward, because then Almiron would be slightly less effective.
Almiron, very skinny, very fast.
Yeah.
But every time they broke with Almiron, you could see NYCFC were just like, and actually he got taken out a couple times as well. But I think less as an orchestrated effort and more sort of a hack of desperation from guys like Chenot.
Yes.
But the unsung heroes are guys like Remedy. I thought Remedy, I pronounced it like it was French. He's Argentinian, right? Remedy, I thought, was excellent in central midfield.
Yep.
He played that holding middle role, right? So that he essentially gave the whole team structure by always making sure he was in position. And I was really impressed by how he did a little bit of everything, right? He didn't stand in one spot. He occasionally would go and pressure Morales or pressure Medina, or sometimes he would man mark and follow someone, but then he would sensibly pass him off to someone so that he could come back to the middle. And then he had lots of quite simple but effective passes. And then the icing on the Remedy cake is the assist to Martinez right at the end for the third goal. It's him that does that weird, like chop backspin through ball for Martinez to run through.
Yeah, absolutely. And all that is a good indicator or a good reminder that like Atlanta in this game were more content to sit back, be a little bit deep, hit on the counter, and Bobby Warshaw did a good job breaking this down. Be more direct, that it didn't have to be pass through the middle. It could be ball over the top, and we'll see what happens.
Like this remedy ball to Martinez. Yeah,
exactly. And I do think all of that is a good way of looking at their upcoming fixture against the New York Red Bulls, who, spoiler alert, beat the Columbus Crew. That's who they'll be playing in the Eastern Conference Final, they being Atlanta. And it did feel like if you're playing a team that's all about high-pressure intensity, one way to negate that is to give them the ball and sit back and look to counter. And it felt like maybe this was Atlanta trying out a thing, because I'm with you that going into this game, having a 1-0 away from home win does allow you to maybe experiment a little bit more and feel confident in getting the result at home.
Is that what Warshaw was suggesting, that they were experimenting for Red Bulls? Because I would imagine everything was all about winning this game.
No, this is me suggesting that I think you can try something a little bit different, because if it doesn't work, you can go back to what worked and get the result.
I'm not sure I can go with you that Tata Martino was doing anything but trying to win this game first, though.
We'll see, but I have a feeling that we see a similar pattern of play in the New York game that we saw against NYCFC, the other New York team, basically. One New York team down, one New York team to go.
One thing that stood out to me was the sort of poor defensive job that NYCFC's left wingers did. So Tajuri Shradi is the guy that has that terrible tackle on Escobar, the overlapping right back / right wing back to give up the first goal, right?
To give it the penalty, you mean?
Give it the penalty, yeah.
And it felt for all the world like one of those plays where he's forgotten that there's a bunch of cameras pointed at him. Like, we see that type of protestation in our local amateur league, where it's like you can't really go back and see whether or not it was a bad one, but with the benefit of replay, you can tell, like, you fouled him. That's a penalty. What are you complaining about?
For Escobar, it's just a simple cut, right? It's not like he did something incredible. He just ran to the end line, cut, and Tajuri Shradi just went sliding in. I rewound this as well. There's 15 seconds before that, Escobar makes a run in behind, and Tajuri Shradi hasn't spotted it. So there's like twice that he sort of lost track of the attacking right back. So that's a poor defensive job. Then later on, Castellanos, who is playing on the left, he's the guy that keeps Joseph Martinez onside for that remedy through ball. Do you notice how the entire defensive line, NYCFC's defensive line, is sort of like, oh, we got him. But then there's Castellanos just in the bottom corner, very meekly appealing for offside, knowing that he ruined the whole thing.
Oof, that's always the worst when you're that defender and you're like, I know I did this. And again, benefit of replay is going to tell them that it was my fault. Shucks. It is worth noting, I did see several people point this out, that there's an argument to be made that the long ball over the top for Joseph Martinez that eventually leads to them getting the penalty. It does appear that Martinez is offside in the lead up to that one, maybe by a step or two. But I think because so much other stuff took place in between, including the big collision.
Long ball that he fights for and eventually pops loose, but...
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then there's the big collision, and I think that's what got a lot of the attention, was whether or not there should have been a foul given there. There wasn't. Play continues, and then it's the penalty. But I think some NYCFC fans were feeling aggrieved that that offside call wasn't given.
So having not rewatched it, my guess is that Martinez was doing his thing where he stands offside, he stands deep, but then when it wasn't a long ball, right? But it was like a clearance or a lofted up ball. Then he comes back to meet it, but he started in offside position when the ball was played.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like right there, it's real close.
I could sort of see how that would go unnoticed. But also, if you're an NYCFC fan, I could see why you're not happy.
I enjoyed also, while we're talking about other things from this game, in the post-match interview, I think this has been doing the rounds quite a bit. I saw it because Hercules Gomez retweeted it, but Sebastian Salazar doing the post-match interview.
Yeah, in Espanol.
Yeah, in Espanol, and then doing the quick translation of this is what I asked, and I think it's really smart because it gives the player... obviously, it's really smart because then you can ask in their native language and they can respond in their native language. But it also, because if I ask you a question in Spanish and then I turn to the camera to translate what I've asked, it gives you just that extra second or two to think about it. And it did feel
less chance of you just vomiting up a cliche.
Yeah, it felt like he got more interesting answers. Generally, he still got some of those, it's always good to win at home, and this home crowd is great, and we will win more, we hope. You still get those, but that was really interesting to me. One of the interesting responses was he asked about Joseph Martinez taking the free kick that Miguel Almiron took for the second goal, and Martinez basically said, I wanted to. He said I couldn't. He's the captain, so he gets his way, basically. He said it in a very good-natured way, but it was a funny insight into, some people trump other people.
So you can also, it also makes sense that if Sebastian Salazar can ask the question in Spanish and the player or coach can respond in Spanish, then you're going to get a more interesting answer.
Yeah, 100%.
Because presumably you have a bigger vocabulary in your native language, right? So it's just a much better way of getting a better answer out of a player. Yeah, and then Salazar's like translating fast on the fly.
Man.
Some impressive stuff.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a tip of the Total Soccer Show hat to Sebastian Salazar.
Yeah, absolutely.
One guy I wasn't so impressed with, and I expected to be, was Yangel Herrera.
Okay.
Substituted at half-time. Gave away
that was the big collision with Martinez. I couldn't remember who it was.
Gave away that free kick that Almiron scored. Yeah. I really expected more of him, and I'm kind of surprised that he didn't come up big in this moment.
I still go back to, I think that they were set up to expecting Atlanta to try to kind of have more of the ball at home, feeling more confident, and I think City expected it to be more of a game where they needed to sit back, like kind of contain their marks, and then look to play on the break, look to play fast and direct, similar to what they did against the Philadelphia Union, where some of their goals came about from quick pass forward, suddenly the ball's in the back of the net.
Oh, NYCFC's, quick counters,
And when suddenly Atlanta are kind of sitting back themselves and making it more of a physical encounter, you have to change what you're doing, and I felt like Yangel Herrera was one who really struggled to deal with that change of direction in the game.
It's Almiron, right? Almiron makes all the difference because you can play on the counter and be terrifying.
Absolutely.
Without him, you can't do it so much.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. Shall we move on to the final game for the weekend and for today's Total Soccer Show? It was the Red Bulls, New York Red Bulls, hosting the Columbus Crew. They started the game 1-0 down on aggregate.
Yes, they did.
They finished the game 3-0 on the night, 3-1 on aggregate. This was quite the Red Bulls' performance.
It sure was.
They must have imbibed some sort of energetic drink before the game.
I made a similar... my wife came down at the very end of the night to say, like, good night, because I was still watching this game. She commented on, I think Zach Goldman also pointed this out, the all red versus all yellow.
Yes.
Very good look.
The most aesthetically pleasing matchup in Major League Soccer this weekend.
It was pretty bright.
Yeah.
It was pretty bright. But she was like, who's the yellow team? And I said, it's the Columbus Crew. And she said, who's the New York team? And I said, well, do you see the Red Bull thing? She's like, oh, okay, I see now. I see what's happening here.
It's the New York Monsters.
Yeah, exactly. That's the joke. That's the joke she made.
Is it really?
It is indeed. Yes, and I would say this.
You married someone with an excellent sense of humor.
Yes, and then I do a podcast with Daryl. But I would say this. This might be a source of controversy within the studio.
Chris Armas for the men's national team.
Tyler Adams might be capable of being the USA's number 6, but that is not what I want him to be.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so why is that?
I mean, you have to go to the second goal for New York. And it starts with, I think, Columbus trying to play out of the back, but basically getting stifled by that New York Red Bulls press. And I forget who it is who actually wins the ball. It might be Kaku. But it basically is then Tyler Adams helps collect the ball, helps reestablish possession out on the New York's kind of left wing near midfield. And then he is the one who provides the assist for the second goal because he's moved forward 40, 50 yards to be in a position to help this attack. And I felt like this was a testament to what New York do that is so difficult to play against, in that they win the ball back aggressively and high up the field, and then they force teams into sort of backing off as quickly as they can and thus not really focusing on their defensive responsibilities. But I feel like that if he were playing that number 6, first of all, maybe Tyler Adams isn't wide in the spot he is to recover that ball, but also I think he doesn't have the license to charge forward and get involved in the attack, and I think he's really important to New York, who maybe can't rely on Bradley Wright Phillips as much or as in the way they have in the past.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with you in terms of this game, because my big takeaway is that Chris Armas' decision to send Tyler Adams forward is what changed this entire game from first leg to second leg. The weird thing is, if you look at the lineup, it's officially a 4-2-3-1, right? And it's supposed to be Tyler Adams sitting next to Sean Davis.
Yes.
But it ends up Davis sitting on his own, and Adams is then as high as Kaku and Roya and Moore. And he can sort of apply, and he's an extra man in the press, in the high press, and he's the most energetic man in the high press. It changed everything.
It sure did.
In the first leg, when Adams was a bit deeper, they really could, Columbus could almost exploit Red Bull's enthusiasm for chasing the ball by moving them around and switching the ball side to side. This time they just went so high, so fast, they had nowhere to go. There was nowhere to go. The thing you're talking about, I believe it's Aaron Long wins the ball.
It is. I had that in my notes.
Against Jesse Zardes, right?
Of course it's Aaron Long, because he was awesome.
And it's Harrison Afful has been forced into just clearing the ball from his own corner because he had nowhere else to go. I also saw, not to pick on him because this happened to everyone, I saw Harrison Afful trying to take a throw-in and almost giving up because there were just no options. They were completely boxed out.
I remember that sequence specifically because I was wondering...
I say 26th minute.
It was, I think it was It was around there. Yes, because it was 1-1 on aggregate at that point. Because I remember if it were New York still losing, I feel like they would have gotten mad because it took him that long to eventually take the throw because he had no options. And it was like a good 8 to 10 seconds of him standing there looking around.
And then he tries to force it down the line, and I think Red Bulls win the throw.
Yep. Yeah, and so that was a good indicator of what the Red Bulls were going to do throughout this game. And I think we mentioned him briefly. My other big takeaway, this is the only one where I have two, is that I wasn't as excited to see Aaron Long included in the national team rosters lately. That may have changed for me because I thought
just
he was...
Just for the goal?
No. There's one where he, in the 34th minute, Justin Merrim gets the ball wide and is sort of in an open position. Like, it's not like as though he's in on a breakaway or anything like that, but there's not many people around him except for Aaron Long, who closes maybe 20, 30 yards and just has a really good physical challenge. And the key thing for me is doesn't go to ground. Yep. He bodies Justin Merrim off the ball, gets possession, and recycles possession.
So I tweeted a while ago things I was excited to see in a US game, and one of them was Aaron Long's pace.
Yep.
And a couple of people laughed at me on Twitter. I think this game proves me right. He covered, not just catching up to people like Merrim, but he covered a lot of ground and got the Red Bulls out of trouble.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that is key. When a team presses high, you've got to have at least one quick defender to cover any ground for those quick breakaways.
Yeah.
Aaron Long is that man.
Yes, and he is another one.
Tim Parker is not.
Not so much.
So he was great as well, but Aaron Long has the legs, has the pace.
It's a good partnership.
Yeah.
It's a very good, like their skill sets balance each other very well, and their vulnerabilities are balanced by the other one's skills. Yeah. I think it's a great partnership. I am surprised after watching this game and other games as well. It's not just one game, don't get me wrong, that I felt like it was Tyler Adams was going to be the obvious export from the Red Bulls in the offseason. I think there's a chance that it's Long in there as well, at least in that conversation, that maybe some teams come calling about his services.
Interesting. I mean, a lot of people are really pumped about his story, right? Because he was picked up by the USL team and then promoted to the Red Bulls team. It did make me realize just how agent-driven Major League Soccer is. Did you hear I can't remember who broadcast this game, but I heard on the broadcast that the only reason Aaron Long from California, I think he was with Seattle.
I definitely did not, because I watched it on Fox Soccer Match Pass, which means I almost certainly had different commentators than you.
You probably don't know the story then. The reason that after Seattle let him go, I think that's what happened. The reason he ended up with the Red Bulls is that his agent used to be a teammate of Jesse Marsh's. And that connection was made, and that's why Aaron Long got himself to New York Red Bulls too. Like, it's great that it worked out, but it's still a reminder that that's kind of how things work. It's who you know, and we could be sitting here right now not knowing about Aaron Long if that connection hadn't been made. He could have gone somewhere else and disappeared.
But it's a good reminder, people. If you're graduating college, you got to hustle. You got to get out there. You might not have an agent. You got to make those connections.
Anything else that you want to talk about in this game?
Yeah, I mean, we should probably talk about the man who scored 2 goals. Royer was pretty good in this game.
Yeah?
Not least because
Is that right, Larry David?
Yeah, he also had the knockdown for the first goal for Aaron Long.
Yes, he did.
So 2 goals and an assist for Royer. And it was very confusing to me because, as I said, I was watching on Fox Soccer Match Pass, so you can do the arrow key backwards 10 seconds or 5 seconds, I think it is, which is, first of all, an amazing feature. But it's really nice. I now find myself doing the thing I used to do with DVR of watching a show 5 minutes after it started so then I can fast forward through the commercials, where I'll give it a couple minutes and then I'll start watching so that when that ball goes out of bounds and we get 30 seconds of replays and a close-up of Aaron Long, I can fast forward to when the play is active.
Yeah.
So I went back and rewatched the second goal a bunch of times to figure out everything that went into
the second goal, the Tyler Adams assist?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I went back to watch all the different machinations and everything that happened leading up to it. So then I tried to fast forward to go live, and suddenly Royer was celebrating again, and I was like, what? Like, what? Did I get sent backwards? And it was a very good 2 minutes. 74th minute is the second goal. 76th minute will be the third goal. And I would say, though, that for the second goal, not much Zach Steffen could have done. Third goal, really should be doing better, and it did give me a little bit of concern about Zach Steffen.
It was kind of central, right? It wasn't in the corners or anything like that.
No, it was. I mean, it's screened a bit, certainly, but it is still central. He probably should be doing better there. That said, I think the second goal would have been enough. I don't think Columbus were going to be able to fight back from that one just because New York looked so dominant throughout.
Mm-hmm. Final thing I'd like to say on the Red Bulls is set pieces matter.
Yeah, they do.
Did you see the Sean Davis do the X?
Yes, I did.
And I think one arm in the air, which I don't know exactly what that communicated. Maybe the X meant the crossover run that Kaku was going to make over the ball.
I think he really likes Exhibit, is what I think it is.
I don't know what that is. What's Exhibit?
He's a big fan of Pit My Ride. I guess he was the host of It My Ride.
I thought he was declaring himself a mutant.
That could be.
But didn't after he did the X, didn't Kaku run over the ball?
Yep.
And I wondered if the X meant crossing run.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then he went back post to Royer and then back across to Aaron Long.
Yep.
I don't know what the communication was, but it definitely worked.
It definitely signifies this is what I want you to do. This is where the ball's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely some signaling, some preparation, which is incredibly important, especially when you get to the knockout rounds of tournaments. Those are the difference makers.
Extra thing I want to say.
Also, Tyler Adams, difference maker.
So Greg Berhalter is now out of the playoffs.
Yep.
Well, maybe we'll talk more about this tomorrow when we do our USA-England preview, England-USA preview. He is now free to be named US men's national team coach. We were really impressed with what he has done up to this point in the playoffs. I couldn't help thinking he needed a fresh idea after Red Bulls came out with that higher press with Adams up the field. And he seemed to, from what I could tell from what was going on the sidelines, he seemed to just keep asking them to try harder to play out of the back, keep encouraging Zach Steffen to play it to fullbacks. And I thought maybe this was a point where he needed a bit of a rethink.
Well, I think one thing that stood out to me in a lot of when they cut to him on the sidelines, a lot of his gesticulations to me implied that he wanted more movement, that he wasn't pleased with the way things started to get static. One in particular is, I can't remember if it was Affel or Valenzuela, but there's they stayed where they were and didn't push wide, and you could hear him from the wide angle screaming at them, you've got to push wide because they didn't make that supporting run or that drop off to support. And I think maybe it's just the case that the DC United game going as long as it did, the season being at what it's been, Jesse Zardes playing injured in this game, by all accounts had a separated shoulder and maybe a torn ligament somewhere else. I think maybe just the season itself caught up to Columbus in this second leg. But
you don't think there's a tactical thing? Because I would even say Kaku and Adams being so high up the field, they tended to block out Will Trapp and Artur on the ball. So that thing where they used to always go through those guys was absolutely cut out. And so I wonder if you just need to go long, essentially.
Maybe, but I think if your entire stated objective is try to keep possession, try to tire the Red Bulls out. That is what he said he was trying to do against DC United, was tire them out, make them run. Maybe he wanted to do that same thing, whereas if you're just giving them the ball back, you never get into your own rhythms, and you're kind of letting them dictate the entire game at that point. Because now they're pressing you into kicking it long, then they're establishing possession, then you're chasing them, and that maybe goes against what he wanted.
Damned if you don't.
A little bit,
right?
A little bit.
Red Bull if you do, Red Bull if you don't.
Which is not to say that the game was a foregone conclusion or anything like that. Once the Red Bulls got that second goal, it just felt like there wasn't much that could be done at that point. So maybe there was a halftime adjustment or some earlier substitutions that could have been made that maybe would have made a difference. But when that second goal goes in, I think the Crew are always in a lot of trouble at that point.
Final word I want to say on the Crew is I think I retweeted Keith Nasser today, who I think we met in Columbus when we did the tour, that obviously it hurts to lose the playoff game, but assuming that the deal gets sealed, this has been a big win for Columbus this year. Yeah. Right?
I think somebody else tweeted, maybe it was after the DC game or it was after this game, but it was sort of you can always say there's always next season. That wasn't the case 2 months ago.
Right. Imagine if this was the loss that was the last time you ever saw your team play.
It'd be a slightly different vibe.
Exactly. So people in Columbus should be, I think, obviously disappointed to lose, but, happy that there was a good playoff run towards the end and there's a future. And it doesn't involve Anthony Precourt.
It does not.
He's someone else's problem.
And let's all celebrate that reality, shall we? Let's all celebrate that reality. So well done to the Crew. Well done to Greg Berhalter and co. But more so well done to Atlanta, to New York, to Portland, and to Kansas City.
Oh, I look forward to those games. After the international break, that's when we'll get back into MLS Conference Finals.
And before we get a million tweets asking about it, our guess is we get a U.S. national team manager named after these friendlies before the January camp. So probably sometime in December would be my guess.
Yeah, because they wouldn't name it while Dave Sarakin's mid-coaching session.
That would be weird. We did have the conversation before we started recording. Do we see Greg Berhalter in attendance at Wembley or in Belgium?
Keep your eyes out.
Yes.
Keep your eyes peeled. I'm going to be looking. I'm going to be freeze framing every single frame and looking for Greg Berhalter's head.
That works for me. So Dare will be keeping his eye out. We also have several people keeping their eyes out when it comes to the TSS Scouting Network.
We sure do.
We have many reports over the weekend. We've got about half of them to review today.
Okay, first up with the scouting report is Michael Thompson scouting Chris Gloucester, the 18-year-old American left-back for Hanover 2. Michael says Chris Gloucester started in 5 of the 6 CONCACAF U20 Championship group stage matches for the US. In the last game of the group stage, he made an overlapping run, beat out a slide tackle attempt to put in a first-time cross that was tapped home by Justin Renix. I'm very pleased to hear this because I've been watching those games, especially for the Top Draw Soccer Show review. Wasn't thrilled with all of Chris Gloucester's crossing. Crossing.
So a little better this time around.
I'm glad this one worked out, yeah.
We've also had some roster changes. I forget the third name, but we had Chris Richards and Serginho Dest brought into the U20s for the next
Soto.
round.
Sebastian Soto was their third name.
There we go.
Extra striker. Yeah. So that's, and it's Costa Rica and Honduras going to be our group stage opponents. They play each other first. So the US, we can see those two first, and then we play a few days later.
Okie dokie. Yeah. I like this plan. I also like the report from Jeff and Sam Huffman scouting Mukwele Akele, the 21-year-old American attacker for Villarreal B. Mukwele was a second-half sub for Villarreal B and scored within 3 minutes of entering the pitch. He finished a well-worked move, avoiding 3 defenders in the box and calmly slotting home a left-footed shot into the corner. Villarreal B fell 2-1 to Olot, but Mukwele continues to be an impact player for the still first-place team.
2 words for you. Minnesota Messi. Andy Lang is scouting Marley Canales, the 20-year-old American midfielder for... I didn't invent that. That's someone else's. 20-year-old American midfielder for UCLA, Marley Canales. Andy says UCLA started its postseason play, the tournament is happening, against San Jose State on November 9th. The Bruins won 5-0. Canales knocked home a second-half penalty kick for the first goal of the season. UCLA...
Her first goal of the season.
For her first goal of the season, UCLA advanced to the next round where they will play the Minnesota Gophers.
I thought they were the Golden Gophers, but I went with this report. We'll see. Maybe winter in Minnesota makes them less golden. I don't know. John Schwartz scouting Gideon Zelalem. I've heard of him. The 21-year-old American midfielder for Arsenal. This one's a bit longer, but it probably should be because Zelalem has been a person we haven't talked about much for the last 18 months or so because he's been recovering from a cruciate injury. Zelalem has been getting minutes.
Did you say cruciate injury?
Ligament injury. There we go. It's what it is. Zelalem has been getting minutes for the Arsenal U21s. He started and played a labored 45 minutes in their 3-1 victory over Forest Green Rovers in the EFL Trophy last Wednesday. Arsenal Academy manager Freddie Lundberg said he wanted to get Zelalem back on the pitch, but that he was only permitted to play 45 minutes as he is still recovering. Lundberg added, quote, "If you haven't played for a long time, it can be hard to match the tempo, but he did really well for the circumstances that he's in, and hopefully he'll kick on from there," end quote.
That sounds like he actually didn't do very well, but Youngberg's just saying he did well to get on the pitch at all.
Yeah, pretty much. The hopefully at the end really cements that one, yeah.
Well, for me, it was the for the circumstances.
Yep.
Yeah. But so it's great to see Zelalem. Hear that Zelalem is back. Stephen Kovac is scouting Thierson Jordan Sibachou, the 22-year-old French-American striker for Stade Rennes. Stephen says, in his first action since mid-October, Jordan came on in the 76th minute and provided a burst of energy, getting an attempt on goal in the 2-1 win over Caen. Thursday, he came on in the 71st against Dynamo Kiev in the Europa League. While chasing the game, Sibachou scored from 6 feet out in the 89th minute to bring one back in a 3-1 defeat.
There we go. Goals are goals. That's all that matters. Speaking of goals, Jeff Markman scouting Reiss Nelson, 18-year-old English midfielder on loan at Hoffenheim from Arsenal. Nelson has scored again for Hoffenheim, this time notching the game winner against Augsburg 3 minutes after coming on as a substitute. Nelson ran onto a teammate's rebounding shot and calmly right-footed it in to seal a 2-1 victory. The goal was his 6th in 7 games in all competitions. He became the 3rd youngest player to score 5 league goals in Bundesliga history and has increased calls for him to have that loan canceled for him to come back to Arsenal, particularly given the injury to Danny Welbeck over the weekend. They could maybe use some goals. Maybe they could come from Reiss Nelson.
Jeff also sent us a follow-up tweet. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was that Reiss Nelson was named Young Player of the Month in the Bundesliga.
That would make sense to me.
He's
been young and good and a player this month.
I might have misremembered that, so don't take that for granted. Sorry, Jeff, if I've messed that up. Either way, Reiss Nelson's doing well. Philip Andriani is scouting Andre Green, the 20-year-old winger on loan at Portsmouth from Aston Villa. Andre Green has returned to full training after knee surgery 2 months ago, and the Portsmouth coaches seem eager to get him back on the pitch. They've received permission from Villa to play Green in the FA Cup.
I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing based on that report that Portsmouth will be playing Aston Villa in the FA Cup, given that they got permission. Maybe it's just that they're trying to rush him back, or maybe
it might be more of a medical permission thing. Like it's his parent club, so it's like getting the parent's signature on the field trip.
Mom and Dad have to sign off for him to play in the FA Cup. Final report comes from Zach Rose, scouting Ronaldo Vieira, 20-year-old English midfielder for Sampdoria. Ronaldo got his first start in Serie A for Sampdoria in their 4-1 defeat to Roma. It was not not a particularly great day for any Sampdoria player, but Ronaldo nearly had his debut goal when he got on the end of a corner and directed his header right at goalie Robert Olsen.
Oh, thank you.
Robin Olsen, excuse me.
Excuse you. You are excused. Thank you to everybody for the scouting reports. I've assigned a lot of players over the weekend. I had a really good scouting assignment session. If you've signed up for the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network and you're thinking, hey, it's been a while, why haven't they sent me my player? It's basically because of some sort of clerical error on my end. It's my fault. The way you can correct that is just email me, DARYL@TotalSoccerShow.com. Let me know that you want your player. I will get your player to you, I promise. We do try really hard to keep it organised, but it's also really hard to keep it organised. So yeah, if you email me and you want your player, I will send you your player.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I can see your desk in the background.
Yeah. There are things on it. I also want to say a thank you to Kyle Knight. Kyle signed up to support the show, but not to be a scout, but to be a sort of a talent spotter, where he's been adding players to a document that we can then assign to other scouts.
Making life easier.
Yeah, Kyle's been making life easier. It's also, we haven't reminded anyone about this for a while, if you'd like to just support the show, if you have so much money you don't know what to do with it and you want to support the show, but you don't want to do any scouting, you can still sign up at totalsoccershow.com/join and be a silent scout, where you won't have to scout anyone, but you can support us financially.
That is always appreciated, certainly.
It keeps the lights on. The lights are on right now, and we need it even more now that they've changed the clocks.
I feel like you're stretching this out because I said this show would be an hour and 10 minutes, or did you say it would be an hour and 10 minutes?
I said an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like you're stretching this out on purpose now. I see what you're doing here, and I've called you on it. So, with that said, thank you, Dale Grove, for taking the time to talk to me today.
DeAndre Yedlin, back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you very much.
We'll talk to you again tomorrow with our England v USA preview.